Hello everyone, this is Robert, 50 Years of Chess. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the games. I hope you enjoy this one just as much. It was a really bit of a special game that I want to share with you this time. I've played thousands and thousands of chess games in my life since I learned to play the game. But this one was a bit special towards the end. It was just really good. I want to share it with you. My opponent was an Indian man, 39 years of age, named Arun, who's an arena candidate master. So he's useful, that's for sure. The game went as follows. He's playing white and he started with e4. I played c5, which is a Sicilian opening. Knight f3, d6, bishop c4, knight c6, d3. This is book, but he's playing the closed Sicilian here. By not playing d4, he's keeping the game, what they say, closed. Knight f6, knight g5. This is a bit ambitious as it's not going anywhere. Maybe he wants to play f4 and then drop the knight back behind the pawn on f3 again. So I played e6 to prevent any attack on my king. He played queen f3. Now that's quite ambitious, I must say. It's all looking good, but it's superficial. There's nothing there for him at the moment. So I'm playing h6 to kick the knight away. But he went queen h3. I think he's opening that. I moved the pawn on to e5, attacking his queen with my bishop, but that would allow him to play bishop takes pawn check on f7, so I'm not going to do that. Instead I played d5, attacking the bishop. He went bishop b5, and I blocked that pin with bishop d7. So e5, I think this is a mistake because he's got nothing back in it. No reason why I just can't play knight takes on e5, which is what I did. That was just a bit careless. He's played bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, knight back to f3, has to play it now, really. And I played bishop d6. Now, by playing bishop d6 instead of knight takes knight, I've gained a tempi from this because I'm defending a piece but developing a piece at the same time. This is how you improve at chess. This is how it's things like this. It's learning how to gain tempis in matches where you get a little bit of initiative. If you look at my position, all my pieces are developed except that I haven't castled. And then the two kings would be, the two rooks would be connected. And then I'm fully developed in my place. Whereas he's got a knight and a bishop that haven't been developed yet. He's not castled. So he's been moving his queen around, and this is what's caused him to fall behind. It's not good to play like that. So he played the bishop f4. Now this also, it's not a terrible move, but it's not good to move pieces to squares where the piece isn't going to be defended. Now if I had some kind of move where, say, his queen was on, let's say, h4, I would be able to go back knight to g6, attacking the queen, but also double attack on a bishop. And that's that way you would lose the bishop. But this is the kind of thing you've got to be careful of when you've got a piece unguarded. So I played knight takes knight, queen takes knight, and then I push my pawn on. So this is another strong kind of way to play, to give you space to drive your opponent's pieces back. And it's, look at those three pawns, a phalanx of pawns there, all in a line, and they're strong. That's what you call a pawn line, a wall of pawns, which means you've got a lot of spaces that you're controlling. B4, D4, F4, and D4, yeah, B4 and F4. So he's played the bishop back 4, D takes E, D takes E, queen to E3, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes bishop, queen D4. So this is a good move, I feel, because I'm attacking B2 as well, where he would lose the rook in the corner if he doesn't take my queen, which means he'd either have to go across to B3 to stop that, or to C3, which is probably his best move, because then if queen takes queen, he's got knight takes queen. So he played queen takes queen, C pawn takes queen, giving me doubled pawns there. And now I've got no weak pawns now. I had weak pawns on C5 and E4, no longer. They're both connected, and it's looking very good for me. Knight D2. I castled queenside. This is safe to do so, even though there's no pawn in front of my king, because there's no queen to exploit it. Castles. Queenside, same as I did. And I pushed the pawn on, attacking the knight, so I can get another pawn on a square forward, but not too far. Otherwise, he'd be able to use his king and a rook to capture that pawn, which would only be defended by probably one piece. So pawn takes pawn, knight to F3. So I took the rook on D1, he captured with his other rook, and then I got my rook behind my passed pawn, which is what I've been looking at, getting a passed pawn. So there you can see I've got pawns on E, F, G and H against a double pair of pawns on G2 and G3. He's got 3 on the other side against 2. So I've definitely got an advantage here now. Rook E1 and knight into B4. I really like this, having this knight here. Pawn on F3 or H3 to attack that knight, to make it move. So this is really good. I'm protecting it twice, and he just can't win it. He can't get his king there either. So knight to D4, stopping me pushing it on. Now I've also played G6. This is to begin my pawn roller up the board, but it stops his knight from going into F5 and attacking my pawn twice, and also preparing knight into D6 with a fork on my king and rook. So he went knight B5, which is a good move. He's played a good move here because he's threatening that fork on D6 against my king and rook, and he's also threatening to take the A pawn. So I move my king to D7 so that I can get behind that knight if it takes a pawn, but it's also part of where the endgame. It's very important that you move your king up and support your pawns if you want to win the game. So he took the pawn, rook behind. Now, if he goes back to B5, he would lose the A pawn and be in serious trouble. I think he'd have to go king B1, because otherwise I've got rook down to A1 checkmate. So he found a way of dealing with this. He played rook D1 check, king E6, coming out the board a bit more. Then rook E4. So he's threatening to take my pawn. He's threatening the knight on G4, and so it would be a swap. But I would be able to take that A2 pawn as well, and then he'd have to move the king to B1. So F5, holding that knight in place. I don't want it moved from there, so it's supported by the pawn. And he's played rook to A4. So he's guarding that knight, is safe for now, but the rook is unprotected, so he can't move the knight. knight into f2. Now I played this because the plan was to play rook d8 and come down rook d1 mate, but he's found a nice little move here. He played rook to a3, so he's threatening rook takes pawn. I can't push the pawn on because he will play rook e3 check and win that pawn, and threatening my knight. So if he takes my knight, when I takes his knight, and then rook takes pawn, he can get his king out to d2. So I went knight back to g4, and he brought his knight back to b5, because now the rook is protected by the knight and the pawn. So I pushed my g pawn on. Now you say, why have you done that when he's got knight c7 check, fork, winning the rook? Well, I'll explain what happened. Just before he moved the knight back to b5, it was his move, and while I was looking at the game and thinking what's going on, I was using what's called the pre-move, which is to put your mouse on your pieces, and you can move them, or one of them, during his move, so that when he makes his move, you get an automatic move of your piece, which is the one you were moving before it was his move. It's a time-saving thing. It's used often in time scrabbles. But I was just looking to see how I could improve my position visually, and then knock off the move. And what do I mean by knock off the move? Well, just before he made his move, I should have took the mouse and just clicked on a different piece, and that would have cancelled the pre-move that I'd made. But I forgot to do it. And so, to my horror, he played knight c7, and I thought about resigning. But I thought, no, he's rated a lot lower than me. He's a candidate master, so he's two levels down below me on the titles, on the arena title. So I didn't want to lose to him really. So I moved my king up. I thought, well, I'm going up the board anyway. I've got all these pawns. Surely I can do something. So he took the rook, and now I was crushing him really before that, but now he's favourite easily. So I moved the pawn on to f5, f4, from f5 to f4. And he played the king across to d1, and then I played pawn takes pawn. So I did this because I want to be able to push a pawn on at some stage. Now he played king into d2, so if he wanted to, he could probably swap that off, that pawn, for the rook and knight, and it might be difficult for me to win. So I pushed the h pawn on. I thought, well, we'll see what happens. And he played rook b3. And I thought, well, this has got to be a mistake. Surely it's a mistake. He's giving me chances here, and I'm not going to miss that chance. So I pushed on the h pawn again. And now this is getting serious, because if I play h3 and he goes pawn takes pawn and I push my pawn on to g2, he can't stop me queening. So he realised this and played rook to b5, check, king to f4. He took the pawn, and then when I pushed on, he calculated that he could stop it by playing rook check on f7. So I played king to e4, and then he brought the rook back. Again, he couldn't go pawn takes pawn because the pawn couldn't move on, and he wouldn't be able to stop me queening. So I now, instead of taking the pawn, because if I'd have taken the pawn on g2, he could just play rook to g1, and I can't save that pawn, and the other one would be in a lot of trouble. So I played the best move, which was h2, and so now his rook has to stay on that first rank. He can't, it's paralysed, it's got to stay there. His king's pretty much paralysed, got to stay where it is. He's only got a knight and pawns to move. So he's looking at winning this game with his connected 3 pawns on his queen side. And I've got to do something to stop all that. Now, as I looked at this game, I thought, I've got knight into f2, and it will probably mean I could push the h pawn on, and he would have to take it with his rook, and then I go knight takes rook. But it doesn't give me the win, because we'll still be a knight against each other, and he will have 4 pawns to my 3, and 2 of mine are connected, so that's not the answer. So he played c4. He's going to try and go for a queen, and he just march up the board with all 3 pawns in the chain connected, well, supported by the knight, as the rook can't support it. So I played knight into d5, and it was here that I realised, having looked at it, used up quite a lot of my time as I'm getting a bit low, I saw a chance to win this game in 6 moves ahead. Normally I don't look that far ahead. I usually mess up when I try to do that. But this time I got it. I got it all worked out. I've checked, I double checked, and I'm certain I'm going to win this game now. Now he should have brought his knight out to either d2 or b6, so he could then push the pawn on again. But what he did was he did push the pawn on instead. So I played g4, very important move, and you'll find out why in a minute. This is part of the plan to win the game. You may say, well, how's that going to win the game for you? Well, just watch, be patient, and you'll find out. He played b4, and there you go. I played knight into f3. Now he can't take with the pawn check, because the pawn takes pawn, and then after he moves his king, I just moved down to g2, and I will queen and win the game. So he played c6, and then I flicked the knight to d4. So this is what I'm really doing. I'm forcing his king back. So when he goes back, I then push on the pawn, and he has to go to h1. So these are all forced moves. When you get a player in a position where you know he's going to be moving exactly where you want him to, because that's the only move he has, you can be sure you're winning. So I'm not going to take that pawn on d6. Instead, I move the king up. And there you go. What would be my next move? Well, whatever he does, I would play knight c2, check, mate. His king can't move. It can't move now. Neither can his rook. All he got is those pawns. And even if he'd had one on c7, it wouldn't make any difference. So now he goes to c7, but he's not got a queen yet, so I can play knight c2, checkmate. And there you go. A 6-move checkmate. It's all done from the maneuver of the knight and the timing. Now, as for my opponent, after I'd lost my rook, he's winning. And I've said so many times to you, when you have a winning position, it's not won, because you've got to win it. You can't just have a winning position. It's not enough to win it. You've got to go and win it. And he failed to do that. what happened, I think, was he's lower rated than myself by quite a bit. And he's not a bad little player, but I think he got a little too confident because he knows he's lower rated than me. He also knows that he's a CM and I'm an IM, and he probably hadn't beat an IM before and was really thinking this is going to be great. But if you start thinking ahead of what might be, which hasn't happened yet, that's when you become a bit too casual and you let the game slip away. And this is why most of the time when people have a one game and they lose, it's because they've not been careful enough to go and win the game. Be concentrated, be focused. And this guy lost his way when he needed to have stayed cool. But these pawns scared him to death there. And played rightly, you can win games like this. And very rarely have I been able to do this. But I think I played a good endgame here. Though he did miss some moves, like getting his knight out earlier. So he could have come back and perhaps harassed my king to stop me from going where I did. So there you are. That was the game with Arun Alex, Candidate Master from India, 39 years of age, on arena chess in a rapid play match. Hope you enjoyed the game. I'll bring more games to you like this, and also ones I may be able to find amongst my treasure trove of games. I've still got some around, so I'll be looking and finding them. So for now, until I come back to you again, I want to thank you all for being patient during the time you're waiting, and thank you for all those that have subscribed to the channel and for your comments and everything. It's very much encouraged me, and I hope it's encouraged you also. So thank you for watching. This is Robert from 50 Years of Chess. Bye.